Is there any other board questions on this?
I'd like to make the motion that we support the bill.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Diana Love. We have a second by Susan Granzilla. With that, any other board comment? Any comment from the public? Can we get a roll call?
Who was the first motion by again?
Chair Love,
Okay.
motion, second by Susan Granzilla.
All right. Diana Love. Joel Barton.
Aye.
Rodney Cobos.
Aye.
David Delatorre. Sorry, Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Amanda Gallo.
Aye.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Alan Guy has an excused absence. Jacob Lopez.
Aye.
Michael Mark.
Aye.
Henry Nutt.
Aye.
Steve Pinelli, excused absence. Jim Ruane.
Aye.
Thomas Ruiz.
Aye.
Mary Tyker has an excused absence. Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
All right, we still have more. We have a lot more. Hang on.
Okay.
All right. So the next bill, AB 2677, we're going to turn to page 93 of the packet. This bill is an effort to limit the litigation costs faced by a surety bond company when paying a claim more than $25,000 on a contractor's bond. Bond companies typically pay out on licensed bond when they are named in a civil lawsuit when the insured contractor is found to have violated contractor's license law throughout the CSLB administrative action and/or when the insured contractor has not complied with a CSLB-sponsored arbitration award. Or the surety may make a good faith payout after reviewing the merits of the claim. If the bond pays out, CSLB will suspend the license until the licensee resolves the payout with the surety. As your board packet describes, a recent court case involved attorney's fees among the costs that a surety company may have to pay in a civil case involving a bond, even if the total of the award costs and fees exceed an amount of the bond. This subjects the surety and licensee to make a greater liability than the $25,000 bond amount. This may also greatly increase the cost to an applicant or licensee in purchasing a bond. The surety company and contractors associations are flagging this as a large concern. This bill would cap the payout by the surety at the amount of the bond itself for all its claims and any costs, including attorney's fees. So if an entire bond of, let's say, $25,000 pays out to a consumer, then any awards for the costs, including attorney's fees, would be recoverable only against the contractor under the bill as currently written. Again, the bill would limit the surety's exposure to the amount of the bond, or $25,000. At the April meeting, the board voted to support this bill. Staff is making no further recommendation. This bill is in Senate Judiciary but does not have a hearing date. Is there any board member comment? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Okay, moving on. We are now on the third bill, AB 2993 Grayson. Please turn to page 94 of your packet. To start, I'd like to note that there's a typo in the packet. On the top page of page 95, it describes the prohibition on a finance lender from releasing full payments to the contractor or collecting any payment from a contractor that is in an error. It should say requesting any payment from the consumer. So replace contractor to consumer. This bill makes two primary changes to the home improvement contract requirements as follows. 1, existing law provides consumers 3 days to cancel a home improvement contract at 5 days if they are over 65. This bill would change these periods from 5 days to 7 days. existing law provides a contractor from receiving payment for work not performed on materials not delivered, whether that payment is from an owner or third-party lender. This bill would make it additionally clear that a contractor cannot accept full payment from a finance lender until a homeowner confirms three things. 1, the project is complete according to the contract. 2, there is a final approval for permit requirements. And 3, the home improvement is operational. This bill makes further requirements of financing companies. It requires the financing lender have an oral confirmation call with the consumer before the loan is final to confirm key terms and other details. It also prohibits the finance lender from releasing money to the contractor or requesting money from the consumer until the property owner confirms everything I stated earlier. It allows the consumer to withhold payment to the lender if there's a problem with the work. At the April board meeting, there was a concern particularly from board member Steve Pinelli about placing the onus on the homeowner that the work is approved and finalized by a building department, which could place the consumer in a compromising position. As a result, the board took a support if amended to address this concern. Staff has subsequently met with board member Pinelli, who recommended the following amendment that will ensure that contracted work is complete without putting the onus on the consumer. Board member Pinelli's recommendation is to amend the legislation to require the lender confirm with the building department the contractor work has received final inspection. I want to thank board member Pinelli for his work on this matter. This bill is now in Senate Banking and Financial Institutional Committee with a hearing next week. Staff is making no further recommendation. Is there any board comment?
I have a comment about another amendment, but I need the help of register vote. We were talking, this is talking about consumers not paying in full until the work is completed. I discovered in a personal inquiry with work being done that there's a reason that they can request for money up front, and I need Dave to help me. What's that called?
Yeah, a contractor can file what we call like a blanket payment, blanket bond with the board so that it covers at least 50% of the ongoing projects they have at any one time. Some major contractors have that, but I would say that's a little bit separate than what we're talking about here, because why this bill is so important to California consumers is because the lenders are paying the contractors directly, and the consumer has to pay back on that loan. And if the contractor was paid and didn't do the work, that's a significant liability. But I think, Carol, there's probably about 18 licensees, I think, that in the state that have that blanket bond where they can receive on home improvement 100% of the contract price up front. Do you want to comment on that?
At last count, there were only 22 contractors in the state that had an active blanket bond with us. There's not very many.
And the reason that I brought that up is because that is what we experienced at our home in doing that. We had previous work where we gave the money up front and found out later by me being on this board that that's something that you're not supposed to do. So the next time we did something and we were asked to do the money up front, I called Dave, and that's when he looked up the contractor and found out that there was a blanket bond where they could require all the money. So that's why I'm asking, does that need to be a part of this? But apparently not. So I just wanted to make that of record, that is a possibility. So I don't know how that would play into this.
I guess I might weigh in on this, but I don't think it needs to be part of this, because I think we need to remember that solar is very unique. Other industries, the lender doesn't pay your roofing contractor directly. You may get a home improvement loan, but you pay the contractor directly. And we did meet with Steve Pinelli, and I think, as you recall from the last meeting, he was pretty concerned about this, putting a homeowner in a bad spot. What this bill would do is try to take that homeowner out of being pressured to sign off on a job that might not be operational. It's about the lender having responsibility to make sure that that permit is complete, that job is complete before that contractor gets paid. It still has the component where the homeowner has to sign off and say it's okay to release payment. But that's kind of what this is about. Now, if a contractor had a blanket bond I don't know, Mike, what do you think? Should it include the blanket bond?
Well, I think the question would be, and I would pose it to the group, would you have an instance where a consumer would use a contractor that has a blanket performance bond and the consumer gets financing? That could occur, right? And if that occurs, then this bill would not change any. My understanding would be that the provisions of this bill would still come into play. The financing company would not be able to release the final funds to the contractor unless these requirements have been met. But is anybody following?
I just think the reality is, you'll hear more about it tomorrow. We've got a lot of solar complaints in this state. We've got far too many. I would not personally be in support of giving some type of exception to someone, with this set of rules because they got a contract bond. Because it's different than you as a homeowner paying somebody directly. You have control over making that decision. When you have a loan, you've been pressured into getting this green financing, you're kind of in a bad spot. You've got a lender now that's got often a priority lien on your house. All this bill is saying is that contractor doesn't get paid until that work is done. And if you can still make progress payments, but it needs to be based upon the completion of that work.
Not to belabor this, but this is about home improvement, this bill, correct? So my concern is, how do we confirm work is final and operational? Because in some cases, you have to have the city come out and do an inspection for the permit. So is that after that's done, or after and that could be a month, that could be 2 months.
And it may well be, and this is what we talked to Steve Pinelli about. So this is going to require that the building department has issued final inspection. So this has got to be complete and signed off by the building department. Now, there is one concern. That could have happened and it's not operational. Now, it could be installed perfectly, but it's not generating any power, and that's because it's not hooked up to the investor-owned utility, which could take 4 to 6 weeks. But when we looked at it, we didn't think that was all that significant if the building department has confirmed that it's installed appropriately and completed. That's kind of where we were at with it. As board members, you could recommend an additional amendment to it, but Steve Pinelli was comfortable with this language. What his response was, this is exactly what he wants. He wants to put the burden on the building department to final it and the lender to confirm that it's been final.
And it probably it would really help to make sure that permits are being pulled by the contractors as well, which might not always happen. So in the end, it could do a double duty. There was a lot of scrupulous finance companies that were actually paying the contractors out early, and that's what was happening. So the work wasn't actually getting completed, just like in your case, and they just didn't actually get paid. They paid them the work was only 50% done, they paid in full. And then what Steve was saying is the work needs to be done, and then making sure the consumer knows the work is done. So so right now, staff recommendation is none, because we already took a support with amendments earlier at the last board meeting. So there's no other further recommendation. Is there any other board comment? Yes.
Just a question. I don't know the financing schemes of some of those things. Would there be an instance where a homeowner would get a home loan to do a remodel, and that this would put the onus on that lender to make sure that those remodels are being done? I haven't done one, so I don't know if I was taken out a loan to do repairs to the home or whatever. So I'm just asking out of ignorance, I guess.
Yeah, if I could comment on that. Let's say you go to your local bank and you get a home improvement loan, or you get a loan to remodel your house. The way it's worked historically is you as the consumer control those funds. You've got that home loan. That's not what this bill's about. This is about where you go down and you sign up for a loan, and the money doesn't go to you as a homeowner, it goes directly to your contractor. Mm-hmm. This is really about protecting you as a homeowner and home improvement from the contractor receiving money from your lender and then not doing the work.
One of the things that several of the analyses of the bill pointed out is that we're dealing with a non-bank lender. And I think the example you mentioned, the example David just spoke about, is a bank. This is a kind of a different deal, kind of a green funding deal, which has caused some consumer protection issues that this bill is trying to target.
One in the past was like PACE, but I know they're not talking about that, but that was a really big problem previously, and it would actually put that the money for the property taxes, that's how they got paid back via PACE. So, Board Member Cobos.
Yeah, so is this like a case where the contractor is offering financing to the consumer?
Yeah, it's happening. It really happens a lot in solar, where you have a salesperson come out and they not only negotiate the contract to install the solar system, but they negotiate a green funding loan on your home to support this. That's exactly what it's focused on.
So ultimately, the consumer has the final say, correct? Does this bill allow the consumer to be the final as far as release of payment?
Yeah, so if you go back to the prior board meeting where Steve Pinelli was a little bit concerned, initially the bill was really focused on empowering the consumer to authorize the payment or not authorize it. Steve Pinelli's concern was that puts a lot of pressure on that consumer, and we need to have more responsibility on behalf of the building department and the lender to confirm that it's been final. But it's important that the consumers still have that authority, and they will. So there's, really three checks that the lender would be required to meet. And it will put some pressure on these green funding companies that are doing this. We've had a lot of meetings over the last few years with these green lenders, and there's different things that have come out. We've asked them, look, how can you do a better job of ensuring the work was done before you pay the contractor? Seems, we've had conversations where we've encouraged them, why don't you go out and see it for yourself? Why don't you send somebody out from your company to see if that solar system's even there? Often what they're doing is relying on a homeowner that's very pressured, sometimes elderly, to sign off on it. So we have staff at CSLB that have come forward and said, I don't think the homeowner should be called and told and asked whether it's done or not, because often they're being pressured. It might not even be the homeowner, so have it be notarized. We get into kind of the weeds on that, but that can all be avoided here, I think, if the lender had more responsibility to at least confirm. And most permit records are online now, so you can go to your city and see if there was a permit for that solar installation and was it final. The lender should have to do that before paying the contractor. That's what this bill's about.
It's a true consumer protection bill. Any other board comment?
Yeah, I just have a question. Is there going to be some type of a, in-house checklist to what constitute final work? Because as you were talking about, this is not a bank, this is more green funding kind of thing. So the incident that I was telling you about me was and still is a green funding company that we're still working with. But is there, this on paper sounds a whole lot different than how it works in reality. Let me just tell you, it's not like this in reality.
Well, the answer there is if there's a payment schedule, and this is where the solar industry is going to have to, step up and be a little more transparent as to when payments should be made. They are helpful, though, in some ways already. But this bill is focused now on the building department, that building inspector going to that property and confirming that solar system was installed and is complete. That's where the pressure is now. Now, if you had other work done, the question is, if you have, say, flooring installed, you wouldn't need a permit. It wouldn't work for that because the building inspector is not going to be able to confirm that it's completed. But that is the premise of this now, is the building department has to sign off that it's complete. And it's our experience, the building departments don't sign off on jobs until they are complete. They don't get final inspection when it's not done. It comes down to that final inspection. They went out, it's complete, and they signed it off.
Okay, no other board comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, we will move to the fourth bill. So we are now on page 96 of your packet. This is our CSLB sunset bill. And I again appreciate Board Member Galarza and Chair Love speaking at the CSLB sunset hearing when this bill was first trying to get introduced. This is CSLB's sunset bill. The most important provision here is, of course, the extension of CSLB from 2025 to 2029. There are also a couple new issues that the board approved last fall that are now in the bill. They're described in the packet, but I'll briefly summarize from here. Number one, allow CSLB to recoup the cost of its industry expert inspections on a workmanship complaint against a contractor who receives a letter of admonishment or citation that provides a forum for the contractor to appeal. Provide that licensees pay licensee examination costs directly to the examination vendor instead of the CSLB. As discussed at previous board meetings, this examination cost was not included to the board recent fee study because the plan was for applicants to pay the examination fee directly to the test administrator. It includes a federally recognized tribe among the entities to which CSLB can issue a contractor's license. Staff anticipates the bill will soon include an additional new issue from its sunset report soon, setting minimal enforcement fines in statute. This is to address the problem that only fine maximizes are in statute but are not fine minimums. This often leads to significant fines being reduced to only a couple $100s for sometimes serious violations. So if we move to page 97 of our board packet, the board packet indicates on page 97 that CSLB's new issue 6 will be included in the sunset bill soon to deal with CSLB being considered a surety for the purpose of attorney's fees on civil cases, including a contractor's cash deposit. Unfortunately, we learned in a meeting with Senate B and P committee last night, Senate Business and Professionals Committee last night, that language may not make it into the bill after all. While we're disappointed, staff is not too concerned because there are not many cases in which this will be a problem and there's an immediate solution to it. CSLB can interplead the funds at the beginning of the case or basically turn the funds over to the court to avoid the problem completely. But there are two additional items in the bill that are not from CSLB's sunset report that we want to make sure the board is aware of. Number one, the operating engineers requested a change that simply requires public works agencies to select contractors in accordance with CSLB licensee classifications when selecting a contractor for a job. The current statute currently states the awarding agency can determine the classification with no mention of the CSLB regulations. The other one, number two, involves workers' compensation issue at CSLB. As you all know, in 2021, CSLB sponsored SB 216 DOD, which required workers' compensation insurance regardless if you have employees for 3 additional license classifications in 2023, and requires workers' compensation for all contractors in 2026. At the April board meeting, the board opposed SB 1071 DOD, which would have walked back this requirement and requires CSLB accept exemptions from workers' compensation insurance again. SB 1071 did not make it out of committee, which is why it's not on the agenda. However, there is now a provision in the CSLB sunset bill to address the workers' comp issue, and it reads as follows. By no later than January 1st, 2027, the board shall establish a process and procedure which may include an audit, proof, or other means to verify that an applicant or licensee without an employee or employees is eligible for exemption from the workers' compensation insurance requirement. This provision was added to the bill by the legislature on May 16th. I was able to speak with Senate Business and Professional Consultant along with Register Folk and Deputy Register Jaminski yesterday about this part of the bill. Currently, staff recommendation is to continue to support the sunset bill and to assign a two-person advisory committee to study this issue before the 2027 deadline. Finally, as it states on page 97 of the packet, this bill will be up in the committee on April 21st before CSLB could hear it at a board meeting. So the chair and vice chair authorize a support position for this limited purpose to page 16 of the board's manual. Nonetheless, since it's a board sunset bill, the full board should take a position today before we do any board member comments or questions. I want to make sure I want to hear from Deputy Registrar Jaminski. When the board supported the bill on April 21st, it did not have the workers' compensation component to it at that point in time, correct?
Correct.
So I think just for me, you know, as a board, we had a advisory setup committee between myself and board member Galarza. We had a working group on this workers' compensation issue. We heard a lot of comment at the last board meeting, and now in May, this portion was put into our workers' compensation, was put into our sunset bill, which it puts us for a board-sponsored bill back in that we sponsored. Now it's removing that portion, and then so make sure I'm correct. The exclusion portion, maybe Registrar Fulkin, if you can help me here. I think it changes the exclusions of requiring workers' comp till what, 2027 now or 2028?
Yeah, I think there was two things in the bill. I think it extends the requirement for all other licensees, which is over 100,000 of them, to obtain workers' comp until 2028. But it also has this requirement that the board, I guess, study or come up with some kind of report as to what licensees would be qualified for an exemption from workers' comp. It doesn't say how to do that. It doesn't say how many licensees that would be, but that deadline is in 2027. So I just learned about it with that call last night. I know, Mike, do you want to add anything about that?
Yeah, so to clarify the language that, and clarify something I said, the language that you just read was not in the bill until May 16th. There was a provision in the bill at the time that it was heard on the 21st that extended, it just changed the 2026 from the Dodd bill to 2028. But there was going to, because the other Dodd bill, this 1071, was going along, and this board had opposed it, and so it was, they added 2 years to the Dodd bill. We thought to kind of work it out, to figure out what was going to come next. And then this came May 16th. And that, again, the statement that you read about the audit it's unfortunately, I regret that I didn't put it in full text here on page 97, but it is in.
And I'll read it again. So maybe we'll kind of do a recap of what. So we're having our sunset bill, our standard sunset bill, and that is something that extends the board's sunset date from 2025 to 2029. After May 16th, after our last board meeting, the Dodd bill that we opposed as a board was dropped out of committee, and then they inserted portions of that bill into the sunset bill. So everyone kind of is on the same page. So partly with what's in here, extends CSLB workers' compensation for all requirement from 2026 to 2028. So as everyone knows, starting 2026, it was going to be workers' compensation was going to be a requirement for all contractors 2026. Now, the sunset bill is going to extend that and move that time frame to 2028. along with adding this additional language of by no later than January 1st, 2027, the board shall establish a process and procedure which may include an audit, proof, or other means to verify that an applicant or licensee without an employee is it basically figure out a way where CSLB will find out who can be exempt or not. Maybe explain that a little bit better.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think that you could conceivably determine that nobody would qualify.
That's right.
But we're going to have to put a report together. We're going to have to study this and perhaps consider whether there might be some kind of audit potential where somebody that wants to file an exemption has to agree and pay for some type of audit. It's just Mike and I, when we had that meeting yesterday, Mike and I talked about it, and we thought this might be very helpful to have a two-person board advisory committee to try to vet this out, just see where it can go. And we have approximately 2 years, a little over 2 years to do that.
Is there any board comment? Susan?
I know it's getting late in the day, but, and the legislative process is often a mystery, but if this is our bill and it's the standard sunset bill that we do after the sunset report every 4 years, how did this get in there? If it is our bill and we're asked to support or oppose, how did it get in there and this language, which is, you receive a copy?
So I attended a meeting yesterday with a B&P consultant, and they put that language in the bill. From my understanding.
I'm sorry, who was that again?
So maybe register a vote.
Oh.
Well, I'll just say what I think we learned yesterday in that call is that they've done this before. I've not personally seen this, but they have the ability to put language in a bill, is what we were told, and that's exactly what they did. We weren't consulted about it. They put it in the bill. And they think they stand behind what they've done. Mike, you want anything? I think it's a good idea.
Just that some time back, we had a discussion with one of the consultants that they were going to extend the 26 to 28 because the concurrent Dodd bill was happening. So they thought that was going to be kind of a placeholder to figure this out. And then I went down there, thank you to the chair and the registrar and the vice chair, to provide a support voice for our sunset bill. And it was at that hearing, there was some discussion about continuing to resolve this issue, and the senator mentioned that they were going to try to figure out how to resolve this workers' comp issue. And then it was after that this language went into the bill.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Jim.
Going back 4.5 years with Kevin Albanese, we had a subcommittee meeting, my very first with the license board regarding workers' comp. After that, we had the pandemic and things kind of fell apart. But we as a board worked very hard to establish a 2026 benchmark for workers' compensation. And I mean, this sounds like an end around. It's like, okay, you got a couple more years and then kind of figure it out. And in the meantime, there's people out there that are calling themselves exempt that really aren't exempt. And we're the ones as contractors that are subsidizing these people. So I'm just, I don't have any particular suggestion other than saying we worked really hard to get where we were with 2026. And where do we go now? I mean, we keep putting it off and off and off and off with other pressures that we don't know about.
Great comment. So yeah, my understanding, obviously, the bill was going to 216 is law, and 2026 all contractors are supposed to have workers' compensation. This portion, so that's the current law. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's the current law, and if the sunset bill law passes, the new law will be that requirement will be pushed down the road to 2028. Is that correct? Yeah, I'm seeing some head shaking. And then also by January 1st, 2027, our board will need to figure out who is exempt or not. So it is a kicking of the can, and we've had an industry meeting, we had a board meeting on this. I think the board members were opposed to the bill at the last meeting, just kind of for clarification. Our board opposed the last Dodd bill, and members from the Dodd was at our meeting, and then this is now in our sunset bill.
So what are the ramifications if we...
Board Member Kobos and Susan.
And so these consultants, are they, who hired, are they part of the are they the CSLB consultants or the consultants for the legislator?
No, they're consultants for the legislature. And I can just tell you, earlier in my career, the legislature, in a way, they are the bosses. I mean, they have consultants and they have committees, and the board will sunset if not given an extension. And so that's what the sunset hearing is about looking at the board's operation and seeing if there are opportunities for that operation to improve. And that's what the sunset hearing is all about. And different things can go into a sunset bill, extension bill, and be taken out. What we've learned is that they did remove our carton issue. That's not in the bill today, right, Mike? So they took that out, and then they've added this, the workers' comp, asking that it be really further studied and giving us a time frame to do that. I don't know if industries weighed in on it or not. But the consultants do not work for CSLB, to give you a shorter answer. Okay.
So what is the downside of not supporting the bill as written? I mean, that's a question, because we did pass, support the motion and the law for 2026. So because it's a sunset bill, it's now almost mandatory for us to support this bill because of the sunset extension that is part of the process. But what is the downside of not supporting until amended or taking this up? Again, legislative process is a mystery at times, but as a board right now, do we support this or not?
Let's answer that question first, please.
Well, I think it's kind of an unknown. It's, we go into sunset wanting, our goal is for industry and consumers and the legislature to support this board. That's really our focus. Now we have this issue, so that it's going to be up to you as board members to decide if you could accept this or not. And if you do not, then we'll have to see how it plays out. I mean, ultimately, if you oppose the sunset bill, it could result in the board becoming a bureau.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's kind of what we're faced with right now. That's not to say that you couldn't potentially, Mike, you want to weigh on this? I'm thinking do a support if amended, if you have a different suggestion. I would just say, though, having attended that meeting last night, it came across that they feel pretty strongly about this amendment.
Yeah, I would, I don't have any more, unfortunately, more in-depth insight on this than I think anyone else. It's a unique situation. I'm certain it would be unorthodox, I would say, maybe for the board to not support its sunset bill. But like as David said, it's up to this body.
Through the chair, I just wanted to clarify something. We do have a couple of new board members, and the learning process. I just want to make clear so that we understand something based on to Susan's comment. It says here about the sunset being extended from 2025 to 2029. I just want to let new people know that the sunset hearing, the basis of the sunset hearing was in order for CSLB to continue as a board and not to be a bureau. So it sounds like that they're extending this to 2029, so I'm in seeing that, to me, we will continue to operate as a board until 2029. So based on what Susan is saying, if we don't support this, they could decide that we're not operational as a board. I mean, they have that discretion to do that. So do we want to not support what they're recommending or not?
I think what's conflicting is that there is previous positions of this board that the board as a board had voted and were against, and then that position then was put in the sunset bill. To your point, Chair Love, that for us, it's hard to not support a bill where the purpose is to keep CSLB going.
Do we know why in your conversations? Do we know? Now, like that was the purpose of the hearing. Why is an extension needed? Just because of this legislation? Is that the reason?
We went to the hearing and it went very well, but you have to have a bill that's approved by the legislature and signed by the governor to extend this board. If you don't achieve that, January 1st, 2025, this board will become a bureau. So just the hearing in itself didn't extend us. We got to have a bill, and that's what we're discussing here.
I have Chair Jim Moran.
Just through the chair, just so I understand the parameters of this. So if we approve this the way it's written now, the workers' comp is 2028, not 2026. So in between that time of approval to 2026, I'm just saying for talking purposes, what can we do to rectify that particular situation? I would sure like to know what, and I think we're entitled to know why they extended it 2 more years. What are the pressures? Where do the pressures come from? And if that's the case, we should be involved in that too. I mean, these consultants are great. They have to justify their positions. That's how they get paid. We don't. We're contractors and members of the representing consumers. And we felt after 4 or 5 years of discussion that it was best for the consumers that we sunset, if you will, the workers' comp on 2026. Now, where's this pressure coming from? Who's saying and why? And just instead of just throwing it into a bill, which unfortunately I'm willing to support because I don't want to become a bureau. But I think we're entitled as a board, after all of our hard work on the part of consumers. Where's the pressure coming from? Why change? I mean, what's the issue?
Well, I don't have firsthand knowledge as to who's actually putting the pressure on, but I do know that legislators and CSLB have received calls and letters from licensees that are complaining that they're having to purchase a product, that being workers' comp, when they have no workers, and so they're buying a product that's of no benefit to them. So that's a concern that's out there. Is that true? We had meetings, and the argument is that really it's not. There's a very small percentage, but even if there's a very small percentage, should that small percentage not be addressed somehow? That's kind of my take on it.
And I want to stress, we did have, just at our last board meeting, we had a lot of discussion on this workers' comp and why it's for protection for the consumers, because there are so many unscrupulous contractors that have multiple employees that say they have no workers' comp, right? So it's a protection for homeowners. That's the reason why this bill came forward, is protection for consumers. And how do we get contractors who we know are breaking the law by having employees and not having workers' comp, and that's why there was a mandate by 2026. I know myself and Board Member Galarza had an industry meeting, and we spoke a lot about, it was an industry meeting with staff as a subcommittee that Chair Love appointed us to, and we heard a lot of comments of why the bill as written was so impactful for the community members and for the contractor base, because they felt they were having this, what Jim Ruane said, subsidize some of the contractors that are not playing by the rules. So it really kind of puts us in a kind of a weird spot of trying to supporting a bill to keep our existence, and then something where we have opposed and officially opposed in the past. Is there any other board comment?
So the one comment I have is that when we submitted the information and supported the 2026 date, did we mention a process, or was it more of just the normal exemption process? For example, this extends it, but the board must establish a process for verifying. Did we include that in our prior legislation?
No, there was no talk of that, but in that industry stakeholder meeting, Board Member Galarza, I apologize, mentioned there's different ways to actually have an audit of making sure that you're really exempt. So that we were trying to get there. We were trying to figure out a way to get there, but this was just kind of caught off guard for us.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
To get clarity, it says we have, and I'm maybe expanding on Susan's, where she was going, I think, was it says that we have until January 27, but does that mean we could not come up with procedures before then? And in fact, keep our deadline of 26 if we in fact come up with an audit trail and not have to wait until 27, if we in fact can come up with a procedure that meets, scrutiny, could we not even do it in 6 months? Is there something that prohibits us from fast-tracking this ourselves?
One option to consider, I'm going to ask John Ken to weigh in on this, and that would be to not call a vote today and instead ask for a meeting with the senators that are involved in this. And is there a way John, we could do something like that and then go back to the board or a ledge committee, maybe ask them. We asked this last night. We said, could we amend the language somehow, like what you're talking about? Is there some way we could amend the language so that it wasn't so, I guess, firm and didn't have such a large, a long extension? John, is there a way that could be done?
I agree this is a completely unique situation, and I'm not familiar with that process, but I was writing those exact same notes, and I think what Miguel was saying. I don't see any reason why, if a vote was taken today, I don't see a reason why, if it was support, we couldn't sponsor our own bill with our own information and a process to do exactly what I think was talked about maybe in your meeting and what happened before. I don't know how we get that type of proposal in front of the legislature now in the sunset process, but I can certainly find out. And I guess the board could consider today what limitations, what process, what time frame you're looking at, and we could propose that and authorize, under the procedures manual, authorize staff to be able to talk to sunset with the authority that if that's taken out, it's supported. If that's modified, and we'd have to talk about the modification, that it's supported. It is really a support if amended vote, but I don't know where that gets you. If they say unless it's completely supported, it's opposed, and then you do run that risk of not being aboard at the end of the year.
So is there a time frame within which we must support or oppose the sunset bill? Can the work we were discussing now, implementing a process, can we put that in place and by the next board meeting be able to somehow have amended or have a process? In other words, if we don't support this today,
You're looking for the timelines of where the bill is at currently, if
Right.
it's what committee it's at. I see Michael Jaminski frantically looking right now, so.
And I've turned my mic off, so.
Today is the 13th, so it's up in the Assembly Business and Professions Committee on the 25th, and then after that, it would go to appropriations and the floor, so it's pretty tight.
So we would need to have a meeting like ASAP, if it's going on the 25th of June?
Yeah.
We couldn't even notice a meeting in
Yeah.
10 days.
I think what makes it really difficult for us as a board is, as a board, we've received a lot of public input on this particular issue, and that helped us weigh our decision as a board of why we originally ran the bill, why it's so important for consumer protection to have workers' comp for all contractors, because there are so many contractors that are saying they are exempt from having employees when they really have employees. And that's the real issue, is trying to fix that. And that was the intent. Now, by extending that, now there could be potentially more consumer harm for 2 years of contractors who are still saying they are exempt currently. I don't think there's a really good answer for us right now. We're kind of in we have to support, because we don't want to become a bureau, and I don't know if maybe legal had a kind of a great recommendation. Maybe we could try to support if amended, but then if that means, if it's not amended, then we are as a board opposing our bill. If it does not get amended, that means we're opposing it, right? So
I have a question, Michael. Based on all the input that you got from contractors, does the language that's in here and the time frame that we're talking about, June 25th, does the staff recommendation support all the input that you've been getting from the complaints and?
So you yourself were at a lot of these board meetings that we're at, and we're talking about workers' comp.
Mhm.
And then myself and board member Galarza was in an industry committee meeting that explained why workers' comp is so important, and why the whatever bill number it was actually dropped. They did not move that bill forward, and then they put that bill pretty much into this.
Okay, 2-year bill.
Yeah. So does that make sense? Board member Cobos.
So at the stakeholder meeting, were a lot of the contractors asking, what's the process for verifying? Because I'm thinking, if we didn't have an answer for them, then this is their alternative, than pushing the date out further. I'm just.
No, it was the other way around. The other way around. The contractors groups wanted to make sure that nothing was extended out further. They wanted to keep that 2026 deadline. Right, and then when we're trying to get some ways of auditing that we suggested to the author's office, none of those were kind of heard. Maybe that was my take from that meeting. We explained a lot of the amendments, and we were trying to get some sort of audit process. So now it's kind of twofold. Like, I wish just that requirement of 2026 to 2028 was just not in there, but then still kept some sort of like, hey, we need to have this exemption process before that. Does that make sense? Like, that, I think that's the real sticking point, is the 2026, which is the mandate for workers' comp current law, to now, if this sunset bill passes, workers' comp for all contractors will then be 2028.